Greetings viewers, EricTheCarGuy here with Master Yoda, also known as Kevin Frische of Kalviantor Engines. And we are assembling the short block of the Ford Fairmont, and I'm very excited because there's been a whole lot of work, as you've seen in the videos, that have led up to this point of final assembly. So we're going to cover the bullet points of this whole thing. We're not going to be covering every single detail, but some of the things you might need to know should you go and assemble an engine. One of the first things that I asked Kevin just a moment ago as he's lubricating the threads on the main studs is about the installation of studs themselves. I was reading the instructions before I ever came out here, and the instructions stated to just put these in finger tight. And to me that seemed counterintuitive in that you would just put these in finger tight but yet tighten the nuts that hold everything down to spec. So I asked Kevin about this and tried to get an opinion, and what did you say, Kevin?
My opinion is we're going to snug them up. They do have that little hex in the end, so I'm going to use an Allen wrench, and we're just going to give them a little nudge there so we verify they are tight in the block.
So instead of just putting them in finger tight, it's going to be finger tight and a little scooch is all we're going to do. The other thing I mean to ask you is, what are you putting on the threads while we're installing
them? This is just the ARP's moly lubricant. Different manufacturers have different recommendations. You know, this being ARP studs. When we took the block out of the box and took it apart to wash everything, it did have this ARP lube on it. So that's what we're going to put it together with. Some recommendations is just 30 weight oil. Now, especially with torque to yield bolts and studs, if it says 60 foot-pounds with 30 weight oil, then do the 30 weight oil. Using a lubricant like ARP manufacturers, or some guys will use an extreme pressure lubricant, reduces the friction, so 60 foot-pounds of torque actually causes more stretch, if you will, for lack of a better word, or tension on the bolt. And with torque to yield bolts, you can actually feel it start to yield before you actually get to the final torque spec. So this is just different things we've learned over the years and found out the hard way.
And another question I had for you is, these are, yes, actually I do. These are studs. Now, stock from the factory, my block came with bolts that held things together. And I'd also asked you earlier today, what did you prefer as far as clamping the crankshaft in? Was it studs or was it bolts?
Well, the thing I like about studs is we're going to spread the clamp load over 2 sets of threads. So I like the stud better. I put a main studs in most of our builds. Something else Eric asked is a very good question, and he says, well, what about using Loctite on the main studs? From a machinist standpoint, if you ever got to take them back out, you don't want them Loctited. Okay. So we're not going to Loctite.
We're just going to assemble it with love.
Yes.
And moly lube.
Nothing better.
Love and moly lube.
This has got to be the most monotonous part.
Well, there's a whole lot of repetition that's happening here when you're doing an engine assembly, but that's what it needs to be. It needs to be meticulous. It needs to be looked after. It needs to be clean. You've got like basically an operating table here. There's no obstructions. Everything is all ready to go. Everything is lined up just so, and you're going through this whole thing in a very meticulous fashion. So there's a lot to engine building. It's not just slapping a bunch of parts together, and I hope through this series that you've been watching so far that you see that it's all down to thousandths of an inch. It's all these little bitty details. It's all the checking and double checking and triple checking your work and making sure everything is correct, because the smallest little thing can cause this whole thing to scatter, and you just lost a bunch of money, and you're probably going to be crying along the side of the road when it happens. This is to try and help you prevent that. And this is that snugging you were talking about.
Yeah, I don't get carried away.
Just a little turn.
Yeah.
Is all I see you doing. I don't see you putting any significant force on it at all. Just so that this thread stretched just a little bit.
If I had to guess, it might be maybe 6 to 8 foot-pounds.
There you go. So. For those of you playing at home that love your torque wrenches, I don't fault you for that, but I know how you are. Trust me, I know how you are. You know who I'm talking about. If you're looking for your bearings, I found them. I've probably done that joke at least once. I mean, I'm in a machine shop, I have to do it. It's funny you do them that way, because I always did them the opposite way. I always started them from this side and slid them down into the slot. Is there any particular reason you do it the other way?
I didn't pay attention. I did it backwards?
I've just, no, it's not you've done it backwards. It's just I saw you do it on the rods earlier. And by the way, that's Justin back there. That's Kevin's son, who's also super awesome. Yeah.
Like this?
Whenever I put them in, I'm not going to actually do it.
Yeah.
But whenever I put them in, I did them this way.
The wrong one too.
Well, okay. But that's what I did. I started this way and slid it down into the slot like that. Is that wrong to do it that way?
This is called the locating tang.
Correct.
So I'm going to put it in there and let it locate.
Okay.
Then we'll shove it in.
All right.
Yeah, this actually has nothing to do with the bearing spinning or anything like that. That would be bearing crush.
Well, yeah, so somebody might think that this little tab sticking out comes into contact with the main cap or the other side, which doesn't have the locating tab in the same location, correct?
Right.
It's on the other side, on the cap. And that's a thrust bearing there. That's why that one looks different. And especially on a manual transmission, can you talk to us a little bit about what a thrust bearing is and why it's important?
This is going to control the back and forth movement of the crankshaft, or better known as end play. On a V8 or most automotive applications, you should have anywhere from 5 to 10 thousandths end play on the crankshaft. If you have more than that, then either this bearing is worn or your crankshaft is worn.
Something to really look out for with manual transmission vehicles, because this surface right here, every time you step on the clutch, will get a lot of force applied to it. In fact, I'll put a link in the description to a video that I did about thrust bearings. Well, Kevin, you just did a whole bunch of stuff and you said, wait a minute, I got something to show you. And what are you showing us here?
Well, for different applications, this is part of what I consider blueprinting an engine. We are setting our clearances and up for a certain or specific application. And this, in your case, is boost. So I put the standard bearings in. We have a standard crank, we got a new block, we got standard bearings. And to check the main bearing clearance,
what you've done is you've installed a bearing, you've
yes,
torqued down the main cap, and now you're going to check the clearance.
Right, I have my bore gauges set up to the size of the crank. And that being said, and we're looking at 1 8/10, 1 9/10 to 2 thousandths clearance.
Okay, so you were able to set up this gauge at the diameter of the crankshaft that
yes,
is going to be inside this.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this, with the number on there, tells me how much clearance I have.
I was going to say, what the difference is there.
Right. This is basically a dial bore gauge is the way I prefer to do it instead of plastic gauge. Because this, I can see within 1/10 of a thousandths what my clearance is. So this is too tight. This would be fine, street, stock, naturally aspirated, 5W30 oil, 2 thousandths is acceptable. Our application, it is not. So we're actually going to make you buy 2 sets of bearings.
Okay.
Not only the standards.
There's so many conversations I've had with Kevin say things like, Eric, you're going to be spending more money. Keep this in mind if you ever think you want to go fast. It's how fast do you want to spend? Go on, Kevin.
So our standard bearings is what I have in there, and then we have the X's, which is 1 thousandths oversize. Now, I think 3 thousandths clearance is a little excessive. So I'm going to use half a set of X's, half a set of standards, and it ought to adjust the clearance by 1/2 thousandths.
Wait, I'm scratching my head. You're saying you're putting half and half, so one bearing has one clearance and the other bearing has a different clearance?
It's only 1/2 thousandths.
Well, it's only 1/2 thousandths, but like that comes together to make the clearance that you're looking for? I mean, I'm just sort of fascinated by that because, okay, what's happening here is there's a certain amount of deflection that happens in the bearing as you torque this cap down, correct? To make it go round, it starts out like not round, but then when you torque it, it is.
On what, the bearing?
On this bearing cap and the bearing itself. Like when the bearing goes in, is it not completely round before you torque it down?
The bearing has, that's what they call...
Maybe I'm not saying.
Yeah, that ain't the housing bore. The housing bore is round.
Yeah, that's going to stay round. I'm talking about the bearing when you torque it down.
Yeah, that actually snaps down in. There's a word for that I can't think of. Spread. That's bearing spread.
Okay, yes, that's what I'm...
The only purpose bearing spread has is to keep the bearing from falling out during handling and assembly.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with size.
Okay.
Now, because we're adjusting this 1/2 thousandths, that's only 2.5 thousandths on each side. It's not enough to make any difference. Because this bearing, if we would take a bearing micrometer, or a ball micrometer, and I mic it here, here, and here, I'm going to get 2 different measurements. The bearing is thinner out here than it is here. This is the thickest part of the bearing. This is where I measured in clearance.
Okay.
So, It'll be fine. It'll match up.
I have complete and utter
No,
faith in
that's
you. I'm just
great.
trying to understand.
Yeah, this is a great question.
Putting two different sized bearings in a bore and trying to wrap my mind around that. Is there some kind of problem that could result from that when actually all you're doing is adjusting clearance, and it's such a small amount that it's not going to affect the operation of the crankshaft?
Our beard hairs are 3 thousandths thick, so we're talking about less than a beard hair.
Okay then. So we're good. The beard is 5. Justin says beard is 5.
I mic'd it myself.
He mic'd it himself, so that way he can use that as a special calibrating tool. It's about a beard hair thickness. All right, so now that we've measured the clearance, you're gonna undo these.
Yeah.
Do we have to put new bearings in place now that we've crushed these, or
No, they're fine.
They're fine.
Yeah.
So we have the clearance that we want, and what we're doing, in essence, as you mentioned, is akin to blueprinting, which you hear thrown around a lot.
Adjusting the bearing clearance for the application. I had a big block blown application once. It was 30 plus pounds of boost, and we had to get out to about 4.5 thousandths main bearing clearance before we quit hurting things.
So if you're putting more boost in the application, you want to increase the clearance or decrease it?
Increase.
So you want to increase
Because
the
there's going to
clearance.
be more deflection and I'm going to hurt myself.
Yeah, just don't punch me. We're good.
Right. Things are going to flex more, move more.
Okay, and those of you may be wondering what I have my hand on here. This is normally where the oil filter would go, and we've already installed the oil filter relocation, which is something I have to do for my applications. Because I'm going to be running a turbo, there's going to be an exhaust manifold that's going to run right where the oil filter is. Therefore, I have to relocate the oil filter elsewhere in the vehicle, and this is part of how I'm going to do that. I actually had to purchase this separately from the kit. It didn't come with the turbo kit. I'll put a link in the description to that wherever it's applicable, so that you can also get this in addition to that turbo kit. So at this point, that bearing has been clearanced and is good. And rechecking.
Yep. Can't take it for granted. This stud felt like it loosened up. He did. Something I didn't know I learned the other day is, well, I kind of knew in the back of my mind, but I just didn't know how much, is there's manufacturing tolerances in everything that's made. You know, there's a manufacturer's tolerance for the guy that's grinding the crankshaft, the guy that's machining the bearings. So sometimes these tolerances stack up in the wrong way, and you will either have too much or not enough clearance. I have even mixed bearings from different manufacturers before to get it the clearance where I wanted. Or grab another set from the same manufacturer, and your clearance could vary 2 or 3 tenths.
Depending on the day it was manufactured. Who knows?
Yeah, the batch or whatever.
Well, that being said, once again, I keep coming back to the fact that engine building in particular is something that is extremely meticulous, and it's not something you take for granted. You don't just throw stuff together. You take your time, make sure your clearances are correct. You're double checking. You said don't take anything for granted, because this is the kind of thing that could scatter your engine if you don't do it correctly. So it's tedious, it's boring, it's sometimes mind-numbing, but very necessary. Justin likes it. He really likes doing it. It's maybe this is for Justin what a sandblaster is to cameraman Brian.
That could be therapy.
Okay, so the torque specs for this were 105 and 35 for these,
Yes.
and then 65 for these outer ones in here. So
Yes.
105 for all the main ones going down. And this is the difference. So what you're seeing here on the gauge when he's measuring it is the difference. It's already been set up as the thickness of the crankshaft, this journal right here. So what you're seeing is the difference between is if the crankshaft was in place. And you're closer to that
2.5 thousandths.
2.5 thousandths that you wanted.
Yeah, will be good.
So with those bearings, quote unquote, set up, you got to take the cap and everything back off, and then set that aside and make sure that that stays together. Or you could just leave that bearing inside that cap.
It'll just stay there.
Yeah.
Yep. It'll just stay.
And you're going to do this all the way down the line?
Yes. we'll check them all 5. And they should, being everything's brand new, should end up with the same bearings as we did on number 1.
We'll be back in a little bit. Kevin, what are you doing?
I am putting the bearing shells in the caps.
Liar, there's a camshaft sticking out of the front of the engine.
Oh, that! Yeah.
Oh, sorry, didn't see you there.
All right.
So I turned my back on you for 1 second, and next thing I know, you're putting the cam in.
Yes.
And you had mentioned to me it's a lot easier to put the cam in while the pistons and everything are out.
Correct. That way I can get my big fat paw in here and kind of direct the camshaft along so we don't beat the snot out of the bearings.
My lovely cam from Comp Cams. It's a roller cam, by the way. I think I remember 222 and 222 being the degrees at which it did stuff. I can't remember the lift. The intake is 272. Oh, these are different than I thought. Oh, no, wait.
No, 222 and 222, a 50 thousandths lift.
Okay, there we go. And yeah, 50 thousandths. And valve lift is 572 and 563. And the lobe separation is 114 degrees, and it's also 4 degrees advanced. For those of you playing at home. And what is that stuff you're
This is an
putting all
assembly
over?
lubricant. It's just a little thicker than normal oil. Kind of gives a little added lubrication.
Let me ask you something. You mentioned earlier about the type of oil that I was going to use.
Yeah.
What kind of oil should I be running in this engine?
Well, we're probably going to end up with a 1540, 2050, something a little thicker.
Ooh, okay.
So, but more substantial than a 10W30.
Okay.
So.
Should I start right out of the gate with like synthetic, or should I just go with conventional? Or should I run some special something in there while I break it in? Ooh, we got to talk about break-in too.
I prefer oils that have a higher zinc content in them.
Right.
So we'll run a performance-based oil with added zinc and moly, and that'll give our camshaft and rings the proper protection they need while they're seating in.
Now, are we going to run that all the time, or just for the break-in period?
You could run that all the time. It's not as necessary since you're running a hydraulic roller cam. If this was a flat tappet cam, you would absolutely need to run that all the time.
Okay.
So it's after the initial break-in, it's more for your peace of mind.
Okay. And also, as far as break-in goes, like, what do you recommend as far as break-in with an engine?
Well,
Or does it matter? Like with this application, or are we going to break this in when we
I'm not going to tell you to baby it. I mean,
Right.
when we get it on the dyno, it's going to warm up about 10 minutes, and then I'll make a couple mild pulls, and then third pull is going to be to see what it's got.
for keeps?
Yeah.
Third pulls for keeps.
Yeah.
But that's what I was wondering. Since we are going to be running it on the dyno, does that count as part of the break-in?
That will be the break-in.
Okay.
It'll come off the dyno ready for you to flog.
So are you of the opinion that once it's right, it's right? It's either
Yes.
right or it's not?
Yes.
Okay.
I've had customers roll it off at the racetrack right off the trailer, and the break-in period was the first laps during hot laps.
Now, would you say that that's more applicable in an engine that's built like this as opposed to a manufacturer's engine, or, you know, because it's different. Somebody's driving something on the street as opposed to something that's getting the tender loving care that this thing's getting.
You know, our clearances are opened up a little bit more. If you want a break-in recommendation for something more like a street application, typically back in the days when we had the flat tappet camshafts, I'd tell guys run it for 20 minutes at 1800 RPM. So that's going to be your flat tappet camshaft. Back then, it gets lubrication from oil thrown off from the connecting rods, rod side clearance. So you have to have it a high enough RPM so that your cam lobes and lifters are getting enough lubrication, hence the 1800 to 2000 RPM. The 20-minute factor, not sure where that comes in. I hate listening to something run like that because most of the things I did was open headers. So when they run for 20 minutes, that drives me nuts. So I do 2 10-minute intervals. You know, do 10 minutes, let it cool down. You're checking for leaks, checking other things, making sure everything's tight, and run another 10 minutes. And then after that 20 minutes, we change the oil and filter. And then we go ahead, you could put 500 miles on it mildly, and then you could beat the tar out of it. So.
Okay. Yeah, because different cam manufacturers have like a specific break-in period or break-in procedure or
It's
something
not so
like
much
that.
manufacturers as the types of camshafts.
Okay.
You know, your flat tappet camshafts, or whether it be hydraulic or solid, you need to mate the lifter to the lobe. So the lifter needs to rotate, needs to have proper lubrication.
And if not, well,
You're going to wipe out a cam lobe and you'll be doing it all over again.
it's no bueno.
Sometimes in a matter of 10 minutes.
Ooh,
It can happen quick.
That's not cool. Okay, so we have the camshaft installed, and now we're going to go back to fitting the bearings.
Yes.
All right.
So we've checked all of our bearing clearances. Some of these studs loosened up when I snugged up or took caps off. Put a little more moly on there. Whoops. Plenty of moly on there.
All right, so crankshaft insertion. Ooh, here it is. Here it is. The major components have now come together. And I noticed you put the rear main seal on the crank before you installed it.
Yes, because I didn't want to tear the seal on any sharp edge that may be on the rear flange. So that way I could easily slip that on and when it's on the bench. And it's nice. I like how they cut the flange on the back of this block.
Well done, World Products.
Yes.
Did you put any kind of lubricant on the inside of the rear main seal?
Yes, I did. I did wipe the crankshaft with a little bit of the assembly oil.
Okay, so it's assembly oil, not grease?
No, it's just the assembly oil.
Okay.
So I didn't want any compound in a grease that may, what I want to say, affect the seal.
Okay, so like overrun the seal? Because I've always put grease on them, and I always thought that was cool, but you're telling me I'm better off with oil?
Yeah, because that's what it's going to run with.
Correct.
So.
Okay, well from now on I'm going to use oil instead of grease on those rear main seals.
Try not to overthunk it.
Yeah, well.
Arrows in the right direction.
This is exciting. It's like watching something being born.
Doink, doink, doink. There we go. Now, I need to wipe a little bit of silicone back here.
On the little ends where,
Yes.
where it connects to the outside block. Who cares? This leaks, but this is important. So now you need to, or you said you were going to put just a little bit of silicone on these ends here. So
where the cap's going to meet the block.
Okay.
And that was a plenty.
Notice that he's using very small amounts.
Too much will cause a problem. And I did not smear the whole housing with silicone. The silicone will take up space, it will shove on the seal, could cause premature seal failure.
Let the gasket do the work.
Something I didn't discuss is I'd like to have some of this lube on both sides of the washer. I don't want the torque wrench to come to its torque setting because the nut galded to the washer.
You want it to come to the torque setting because it's actually that torque.
Because the correct tension is on the, am I getting that? It's on the stud.
This is why we have the tray to help catch things.
Yes.
And obviously there's leakage. Berth gets a little messy. This kind of thing and seeing it in action. Now, I shudder to say this while standing in a machine shop. Some people opt for the option of, I'll just order a crate motor, and away they go. And they drop it in, and everything's all fine and dandy. But standing here with Kevin, watching him assemble this, there's love in that cake. And those of you that know Monty Python know what I just referenced. But it's, I don't know, it's a craft, it's an art. And I really appreciate this art. And I can't wait for it to all be together. I know we all can't wait for it to all be together and hear what it sounds like on the dyno, but patience, time, care, effort, experience, all those things come together into making this cool and making it awesome.
And this is not, I mean, I'm not doing anything special that I don't normally do.
I know.
This is how it's supposed to be done, how it has to be done in my mind.
And also I'm noticing, for the viewers, as far as engine assembly is concerned, you started in the center and you're working your way out.
Yeah, that's just the way I've always done it, the way I was taught.
I was taught
it
the same,
doesn't
so it's
make
encouraging to
sense
see you doing it that way.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to start on one end. And it's always good to make sure everything's still rotating.
It is good that it spins, because I've had instances where I've got engines all the way in the car and I didn't check if they spun and they didn't spin, so I had to do it again. And, well, lessons learned. Oh, it's just...
Yeah, it's better to check that now than later.
It's got a camshaft and a crankshaft, and they're in there and they're not coming back out. Gotta tell you, I've got to do it. I just got to do it.
That's my crank.
Actually, technically, isn't it my crank? Oh. I mean, I know you made it. I know you balanced. Well, you didn't make it. You balanced it and made it into what it is today. But sorry. Who needs air tools when you got a speed wrench?
I don't use air tools on assembly.
Nah, I can't see that.
A lot of times I don't use air tools on this assembly. I want to see how things come apart, whether it was not torqued properly or especially on engines that may have overheated and things may have moved around and stretched, and there's always that question at the end, is like, gee, was they all tightened the same? Well, you don't know if you use the big old impact to zip it apart.
Right.
Do you ever notice when you get all this stuff all over your hands, your nose itches?
Always. Or your butt. or your unmentionables. Inappropriate itching, we'll call it.
You learn not to wear tidy whities.
There you go. Yes, especially with things like anti-season Molly Lube. You learn not to wear tidy whities, that's for sure. I recommend copper or dark colored underwear. Helpful tips from Eric the Car Guy for your undergarments. Now, several times I'm standing here, I'm saying, can I help? But then I'm thinking, I know your process. And I know that you've got to have it right in your head. So I'm going to be the conscientious observer and resist the temptation to touch it.
I don't even like when the phone rings at this point.
I know. I could just feel you're in a zone. No pressure. Once again, you're going through that same torque pattern.
Yep.
Inward to outward. And going in stages.
Since these only go to 65, I probably won't hit these outer ones till the end again.
So you'll torque the center ones first?
Yeah.
Before you go to the outers? They're the most important, because the outer ones are more like a reinforcement, so to speak?
Yes.
Or,
that's a good word to use. If you hold the button, it'll go on its own, but it always goes past, so.
I did notice you spinning the crank now and again.
Just wanted to know. Gotta know that it still spins. It still feels the same. So just because the torque on the bolt's gotten tighter doesn't mean it's harder to turn the crank. If that happens, chances are
Something's
there's
not right.
something wrong.
And now the outers.
Yep.
It's almost like her little heartbeat on an EKG machine.
Oops, it stopped.
For those of you that saw the painting video, I'm considering calling the engine Dark Matter Pikachu.
This sounds... Next steps may seem kind of counterproductive, but it's something I got in the habit of doing.
Just like they do at the factory.
Exactly.
So you see those marks on your vehicle? They're like all over. They're on the suspension, they're on the engine, valve covers. Somebody signed off on it, and this is Kevin signing off on his torque of the mains. So even during disassembly later, if something should ever go wrong, well, not that we're not making a video record of this, but
there.
Everybody's orange.
Now if the phone rings, we all know it's torque. Pretty nice.
That is nice.
Whoopsie.
Is it piston time?
It is piston time.
Yay! So what you doing there, Kevin?
I am setting up the piston ring compressor.
Which yours is way fancy.
I like this style.
That's an interesting style. I don't recall ever seeing a style like that.
This is more universal. They also have, like this one here.
Oh, okay.
This is solid round, already set to a specific bore size. This one is split with a band around it, so I can adjust it to different bore sizes. It's not often I do a 4-inch 125 block. Usually they're oversized, so 4-inch 155, very common. So.
Well, that being said, I'm used to using the little twist locky type, which is obviously not as pro as the one he has.
Those just cause you to hate life.
A little bit. Sometimes just trying to get it tight and then pushing it down in there, and it's a little frustrating.
The plier type is another type that is decent, and I have those for the smaller boards.
The squeezy type?
Yeah, those work good
I'll
too.
put links in the description to this stuff so you have some idea of what we're referring to here.
We need some lubrication. Now, the reason I use the WD-40 is today's engines have thinner rings than they had years ago. Years ago, guys would dump them in either a bucket of motor oil or transmission fluid or Marvel mystery oil. And once I got onto the WD-40 kick, I've never had an issue.
I have never heard of this. So WD-40 to lubricate the cylinder walls.
The ring seat, no big deal. You're doing an engine that may sit a year, you might want to use a product a little thicker, maybe some transmission fluid.
So something's going on the shelf, maybe not so much, but something that's going to be running a couple of weeks, then yeah.
Right.
WD-40. Oh, I just learned me something. Now we're doing assembly lube inside the rod bearings.
And I'm using plenty, but
It's not going to hurt it.
That's right.
She's going to live in oil soon.
All right, Eric.
You gonna let me do it?
You're gonna be the rod guy for now.
Yes.
We'll switch.
All right.
I just want to make sure this is going all right first.
All right.
Yeah.
Gonna make sure it's headed towards the crank journal so it doesn't.
Right.
There are different tools for this, but in this case, we don't have studs coming off of the rods.
You can put your cap on.
All right, there's a numbered side and a non-numbered side. And since the non-numbered side is up, and I'm sure that this big chamfer is pointed towards this inside here, I'll start running it down. Yes, he's letting me touch it. Let's see. I don't have the touch like you do yet.
It's hard to do at that angle.
Yeah. I don't have gravitational force working with me. Which one?
That was close.
We got it. We got it. their first rotation. May you have many, many more.
No doubt. Quickly.
Quickly. And with feeling. Oh, there's that phone. That's fine. So excited I get to
It
play
turns
part of
over
this.
nice.
Yeah, it does.
I should let you do that and get even more excited.
Oh, I'm excited. This one?
Yep.
Oh. Switch sides?
Nope.
Oh.
Your turn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, I've never used this type before.
I guess I have it laying on the bench and I just stick the piston over it. I try not to have that gap where I'm going to have a ring end gap. And you can just feel it fit. And just kind of help the rings up through.
So it's tapered?
Yes, it is a tapered sleeve.
Okay. This way?
Yep. Whoop. Turn it. Wide chamfer. Your valve notches should be here. Your valve notches should be on this side.
Okay. So wide chamfer towards the crank.
Yep.
Oh, that's in there nice.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
I messed it up. I'm sorry, girl.
That's all right. Oh, we're gonna have to start over.
Inadequate.
You gotta make sure you...
towards the center.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, now?
Yeah.
Actually.
Can you just push? Wait. Yeah, now. There you go.
I put that one in. Twice. Why is this wrong?
The second ring is giving you fits.
Okay. You make it look easy.
Well, done one or two.
One or two, I'm sure. Okay. How's my alignment?
You gotta make sure that's down all the way.
Okay. Alignment good?
Yeah. Whoops. Where did it stop?
Yeah, it did make a weird noise.
Uh-huh. Oh.
You make it look easy.
It's coming out. Okay, we'll switch sides.
We should. I mean, that's 2 for 2. I get it. Darn it. I tried. I would rather it go in properly. And I'm honestly kind of nervous.
I understand.
So. Hold up.
Oops.
Okay.
There.
You do that way better. I'll stick to this. I can do this job. You had one job, Eric. One job. Yeah, you do like it's nothing. Done. I don't know what's wrong with you, boy. Got them girly hands. Yeah, it needs to go over just a touch. There you go. Last piston.
The bench is clearing off.
Right.
It's a good sign.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
We're working on it right now, right?
Oh, yes.
Justin,
Yes, yes, yes.
put Eric on with Pete.
First rotation. Excellent.
So we're going to torque these bolts in steps.
You're just going to go down the lines. These don't really matter. It's not like it's just whatever's handy, right? As far as starting in the center and working your way out,
right.
that's my comparison. That's
These
what I'm
I'll
talking
do
about.
front to back.
I'm not saying they don't matter as far as torque. I'm saying the order in which you torque them is not as important. So in other words, you don't need to start with the ones in the middle. You just start with the ones that are up.
No, I usually start from one end and go to the other. And then we can rotate it around and go back to number one. That way we make sure it rotates.
It does have a nice firm rotation to it. I can tell once it fires up and breaks in, it's just going to be like butter.
Uh-huh.
I can feel the vibration of the torque wrench through the crankshaft.
What's the torque on these?
63 foot-pounds is the final torque for a 7/16 8740 bolt. That's inch 600 long.
I can rotate the crank pretty good.
Let's go back to that one, because I was talking. And then I'm going to mark them. Alrighty.
Sweet. It's a bottom end and I helped. Well, a little bit. I'm learning still, but in the hands of the master, the short block has been assembled, and ooh, just more pieces coming off of the bench. But we're gonna leave this video here. Kalviantor Engines, Kevin Frische, I'm gonna put a link in the description to their shop. You really need to check them out. EricTheCarGuy.com if you have automotive questions. Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram if you wish to connect with me socially. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I will see you next time. Leaving with a smile on my face today. Bye-bye.